Today I want to talk about some more rocket fuel for Bitcoin, and I want to begin by playing a clip from Michael Saylor from September 8th of 2023. Let's give it a listen.
Inflation is here. You need an inflation hedge. So it's going to grind up to replace gold. It'll go to $500,000 a coin, regardless of whether they fix these things. But there are three things that are massive catalysts that cause an acceleration. And I don't think that those three things don't take us to 500,000. They take us to 5 million a coin, right? Those three things are a spot ETF where someone can go ahead and buy $100 million of Bitcoin, buy a security, an ETF security. I think that's one. Two is your bank is going to custody it for you and lend against it. And three is I can mark it up or mark it down on my balance sheet based on fair value. Pari passu. It'll be pari passu to the way I'd handle Apple stock, or at least that good.
So here are three catalysts that Michael Saylor was talking about in September of 2023, and now all three of them have come to pass, which is extremely important. So we did get all of the Bitcoin spot ETFs, in particular the BlackRock IBIT, which has been the most popular. We did get the accounting change from FASB adopting fair value accounting rules for Bitcoin beginning in December of 2024, and now in 2025 all companies are following this. And now most recently in the last couple days, SAB 121 has been rescinded, allowing banks to custody Bitcoin. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. This is a little nerdy, it's a little accounting stuff, and so it's not extremely popular, but little small accounting rules, as we're going to see, can have a huge impact on capital flows. So this is Staff Accounting Bulletin number 122. That's what SAB stands for, Staff Accounting Bulletin. And of course this is put out by the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission. The summary of this, which was just published, is that this SAB rescinds the interpretive guidance included in section FF of topic 5 in the Staff Accounting Bulletin series entitled Accounting for Obligations to Safeguard Crypto Assets an Entity Holds for Its Platform Users. So this guidance, both 121 and 122, is mainly intended for companies that file with the SEC and that hold Bitcoin for someone else on their balance sheet. So this wouldn't be for a company like MicroStrategy, but be more like for a bank or an exchange if they're holding Bitcoin for their customers. And I'll put a link in the description notes below to SAB 121, the text of it, which I have here. Again, SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission. SAB is just a staff accounting bulletin that provides guidance on accounting and disclosure. So SAB 121 was published in March 2022 as part of Elizabeth Warren's attacks on Bitcoin and crypto in the U.S., using Gary Gensler and the SEC as her puppets here. SAB 121 said that even though U.S. banks and broker-dealers and custodians all hold stocks and bonds, etc. for their customers and are not required to count them as part of their balance sheet while holding them for customers, but because Bitcoin is quote-unquote so risky, banks and other companies that file with the SEC are forced under SAB 121, or were forced under SAB 121, to hold any customer's BTC as part of their corporate balance sheet. This is something banks in particular do not like because it increases their regulatory capital requirements, how many US dollars they need to set aside or how much cash they need to set aside against the holdings. So effectively the SEC was able to stop US banks from becoming Bitcoin custodians using this very clever accounting rule, simply by setting up the incentives such that discourage them from doing this. And this is the main reason, when you look around, why we don't have more Bitcoin custodians in the US, why we have very few, just like Coinbase Custody and Fidelity, etc. This is why BlackRock had to go with Coinbase Custody to hold the BTC back in its spot Bitcoin ETF, instead of going with a more obvious, too big to fail Wall Street bank like Goldman Sachs. And this is yet another reason that Coinbase Custody has grown and turned into a giant honeypot that the whole world would like to hack into and steal from. So that's one of the nice things about the repeal of SAB 121, is it should help to mitigate the centralization risks we see with Coinbase Custody. Let's be very clear, even though if you read SAB 121, it says it was instituted to protect retail investors, this is simply not true, because Bitcoin is not more risky than all the bonds, for example, that imploded when the Fed raised rates, blowing up Silicon Valley Bank and other banks. And so it wasn't Bitcoin that blew up these banks, it was simply bonds, and banks aren't forced to hold bonds as part of their balance sheet when they're holding it for customers. So SAB 121 really needs to be seen in the context of Operation Choke Point 2.0 and Elizabeth Warren's attack on Bitcoin using Gary Gensler, who previously had high hopes of becoming Treasury Secretary if Biden had won. So fortunately, electing Trump foiled Elizabeth Warren's plans here and basically ruined the culmination of Gary Gensler's career, which is great to see. SAB 121 is a great example of evil government actors using boring accounting rules that most people don't pay attention to keep Bitcoin off the balance sheets of banks in America. That'll change with SAB 122, which, as we said, repealed this particular section, just this one section of SAB 121, and now U.S. banks will not be penalized penalized if they choose to custody BTC for customers. Net result, many more Bitcoin custodians in the US, including big banks like BNY Mellon, which is the largest custodian in the world of stocks, bonds, and other assets. Many more Bitcoin custodians, as well as all the too big to fail banks like Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, all beginning to offer Bitcoin and Bitcoin products. As you're going to see, someone did this mock-up of JP Morgan, committed to safe custody of your Bitcoin, BTC-backed lines of credit, and growth. JP Morgan Chase serves millions of Bitcoiners, clients, and communities in over 100 countries on Earth. So this is what's going to happen now. Bitcoin is going to become even more mainstream. And this is huge news for Bitcoin adoption. It means that there will be many more places for institutional investors and others to store their BTC and maybe even earn interest on it or borrow against it. It will also make it possible for companies like MicroStrategy and ETFs like the BlackRock IBIT to be able to spread out their BTC holdings across many more custodians rather than holding it in just a few like Fidelity and Coinbase custody, as we said. And it's important to recognize here as well, just because you and I are only interested in self-custody, holding our Bitcoin in cold storage as a bearer asset, just because you and I would never store our Bitcoin at a US bank, doesn't mean that other people will feel the same way. And even for people like you and I, at some point it might make sense. You shave off 1% of your Bitcoin holdings, you deposit at JP Morgan, you earn some interest on it, or you borrow against it, etc., for fiat to buy something. And in this case, if JP Morgan rugs you, you've lost 1% of your Bitcoin holdings. So this is a product that even some hardcore Bitcoiners might be interested in a very small way at some point. And it's important to recognize as well, global Bitcoin adoption means that Bitcoin finds its way into every nook and cranny of the financial system, including banks and other actors that we may not especially like. So we now have the fulfillment of Michael Saylor's 3 catalysts: spot Bitcoin, ETF approval, the change in the FASB rules, and now the repeal of SAB 121, which allows banks to custody and lend against Bitcoin as collateral. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the subscribe and like buttons. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I publish my next video. And let me know your questions and comments in the comment section below. Thanks all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.